This custom built AI automation project planning tool is actually insane. I'm going to give you a full tour through this today. I'm going to plan a project with you today in Project Command OS 2.0. But you can see here, we built this inside of Airtable, and we built it because we had a client who just wanted something that was a little bit simpler than your traditional tools like Monday.com, like Asana, like ClickUp. In fact, we used ClickUp a year ago and it absolutely sucked. Like, it's just too convoluted. And I had an existing project management tool just like this built out already. But the client came to us and said, hey, Mitch, we've got a few $1,000s we're willing to spend on this. Can you build us a better system for planning projects that uses AI to help plan the projects and assign tasks? So we went away, we spent tons of hours on that, and this is the product that we came up with. So I'm actually going to dive through and we're just going to do an example of how you plan a project, how you assign those tasks to your team members. I'm going to show you how it all works in video number one. And this is going to be a 6-part video series where we go through the entire thing so that you can learn from start to finish how we actually created this product. Now, if you do want to use this product, you can build alongside me and literally just rinse and repeat everything that we've done, that we spent hours and hours, dozens of hours trying to figure out. Or we do have this template on our website for a tiny little cost that you could buy one time and build into your client's businesses for 10, 20, 30 times more than what you pay for it. So this is the whole point of what we do here at Big Moves, is we create really great products. Once we have them built for our clients, then we sell them as templates for you as well, so you can get started in your building career if you do wish, or you can use them inside of your own business. Now, the other thing that I do want to dive into before I get too much into the detail of this video is that this channel right now is turning into more of a behind the scenes business growth, the decisions I'm making each week. I'm going to talk about those once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks on this channel. All of the AI content is going to move across into the Big Moves AI automation channel. I'll link that down below. Maybe there'll be a card up here. If you want specific AI automation stuff, then go to that channel. We're putting out tons of content there from now on, and it's definitely going to be the place to be. So make sure you go ahead and do that so that you can continue to learn. But this is specifically going to become more about business growth, maybe more lifestyle in future as well. And on the screen right now, you'll see timestamps for each of the chapters. And I encourage you to save this video and come back and watch the chapters one by one. It is a long video, so you may need to come back and do it in a few goes. But you'll see all of the different chapters here now, and each chapter will build upon itself, and eventually it will end up with the final product. And of course, if you are interested in Project Command OS, you can see here we have it on the website available for you. So it includes our Airtable template already completed and ready to go. It includes all of the automated task assignment as well. It includes our ICE priority system. It also includes the AI models system as well, so you can easily implement and add any new AI models that come out. Plus, you get all of the interfaces and dashboards. You get all of the Make.com AI automation blueprints, so you can easily import them into your own account. And it's literally just plug and play. Plus, we've built them in a way that makes it so fast and easy to import those blueprints. It'll literally take you less than 10 minutes if you have a bit of experience with Make already. You get all of those things. Plus, we then have access into our AI community that you get for free. And you get also the SOP database included for free inside of that template as well. We do have a 30-day money back guarantee as well. So if you don't like it, then you can just get your money back. Now, of course, since you're watching this video, there'll be a code on the screen to get you a discount. So make sure you use that code at checkout, and it's available for the first 100 customers only. So if you want to get this, then make sure you get it today before that code ends and disappears. So let's just dive straight in now and get into what this project management tool does and how it is actually, in my opinion, my humble opinion, way better than anything that you'll find inside of Monday.com, Asana, and ClickUp. Because keep in mind, those tools have to build for absolutely everybody. The benefit, I always say this, the benefit of building your own tools inside of Airtable, using tools like Make.com, like NAM to automate workflows, is that you can get it exactly how you want it. You can add your own custom fields, you can add your own automations, no problem. And you can literally build anything. So that is the benefit, right? Because we don't have to rely on these software tools that only have very small workflows that we can actually use based on what they prescribe to us. We have no control over that. So that's why we want to be building our own workflows. So let's dive in now. Now, I'm going to come back to some of these other tabs soon and the different views and stuff. We have an SOPs database, we have some brand settings, which I'll get to, and all of this will begin to tie in as I just use the tool. So typically what happens as an entrepreneur is we have a lot of ideas, right? We come up with a lot of ideas all the time. We have a million different things that we want to do. Shiny object syndrome is absolutely real. So often what happens is I end up with a full list of hundreds of different ideas and things that I want to implement. And I get a little bit overwhelmed with how to sort through those things. So when I came across this system called the ICE framework, so Impact, Confidence, Ease, this just made project planning and the ideas that I come up with so much easier to then understand what I've got on my plate, what I should be prioritizing, and what's going to be most impactful for the business, most of all. Because what can happen is if you don't prioritize your tasks in a way that is based around a framework, for example, like the ICE framework, then oftentimes we'll do the things that are easy to us, the things that are shiny and unproven, and the things that aren't really driving the business forward, which we don't want. So we always want to be working on the most important tasks that we can at any one time in order to push the business forward. And I've done this so many times in the past where I focus on the wrong things and the business goes nowhere. Even I feel like I'm being busy, but I'm just being busy doing the wrong things. So we don't want to do that. So anytime now when we have an idea, and this can be for team members as well, is we'll add this into the project idea tab. So here we now have a whole bunch of requirements that we have to fill out, with the main ones being how impactful will this be to the business? How confident are you that it will be a good decision, and how easy is it to implement? So I'm going to come back to that in a second. But the project idea that I have is we actually have an epic YouTube AI automation coming out soon. So it's called AI Tube Kit, and we're going to be doing like a product launch. So I'm going to put that in as the idea, and the brand is going to be for our brand, and the pillar, this is actually going to be for product creation and delivery, really. So the description is we need to plan out everything for this launch. So I need to give it a little bit of context first in the description and what needs to be done. So I've gone ahead and written all of that out now, but basically this product takes a YouTube transcript. It automatically creates the thumbnails for YouTube, all the assets for YouTube. It then turns the transcript into like 5 different reels, into 5 different social posts, into some carousels. And then we have like the design files for Canva and stuff as well. So literally I've been using this over the last few days, and I'm creating somewhere between 10 to 15 pieces of content a day, you doing 4 to 5 hours of work. And this is like in the early stages. I think I can probably get that down to like 3 hours of work. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm just so excited about this product. It's going to be coming up soon. But we need to plan out all of the things for that particular launch, which is get the members area ready, marketing for the launch, setting up of the products, and anything else that we require. So I put in there anything else because I want the AI to think about some stuff as well. So we add all of that into the description. And then we have our hypothesis here is this would be a great product for our audience. It will help drive sales and be an important part of the business. So any extra context, I mean, I've already provided quite a lot of context up here, but a really great thing, and this is what the client that we're working with has done, is they have some really great old projects that are similar, but obviously they have different team members now and maybe some different processes and stuff like that. So they'll take some old project plans and say, hey, this is an old project plan from 2 years ago. We use a similar structure. We have some different tools and stuff that we use now, but you can follow this type of structure. So that's what that extra context field would be used for. And then I've just got to request it by myself. And then here's where it gets really cool. And I don't really see any other big tools doing this. Maybe Monday.com might. I saw that on their website. I haven't used it. But you can actually add in your team members as to who will participate in this. So this is actually, I mean, I changed the names here because of privacy for my team. But basically, it's going to be a full team project, this one. And this is how, basically, I'm going to show you just in a second how this would look, is this references a team members tab that has all of their skill sets in there and all of the things they're responsible for, so they can match the right task to the right person. Now we need to just give it a date. So we're actually not launching this for a bit. So let's just put this down here, and it's probably going to be like a 2-week project. So let's just go from 12th of May to the 23rd of May. We'll give that a 5 p.m. deadline just to make sure, and we'll go create. So now I have this idea as to in the ideas tab, and I can begin to work on this when I'm ready. Now, you don't have to be so detailed if you are not going to be doing it straight away. Like you could simply add in, one sentence in the description, 1 or 2 sentences in each, so that you just get that out of your mind into a database and add in your impact scores so you can see which ones you want to work on. So now we can see here that we have different overall ratings. So that one that I just added is actually a rating of 9. So that's probably the highest priority task that we have right now. And if we wanted to filter that, we should have probably filtered that a bit better, which is if I come into here, I can actually sort this by, we want like a second level sorting by project pillar, but then we also want to sort it by the overall rating. So there's probably like a second level here that we need to add maybe. And we want to go rating. Nah, it's not actually going to do it. So it doesn't matter too much. So come back in here, we'll just go done. We don't want to save that. So basically, you'll be able to sort it by that anyway. So if we can click on that, we can sort it by then what is the highest priority. So imagine you had 100 different ideas. You can then sort it by the overall rating and the where you want to get to with what you want to start working on. So once we're ready to then begin creating that, is we now just want to move this into the to-do phase. Once we've done that, we can then come into our planned projects with AI. And actually, before I get there, let me come back to the team members. So remember I said I added in all of our team members here. So we've got in here and team members, you've got your name, what their role is, what type, like how often are they working? Is it full-time, part-time? And then we list out all of the things that they do within the company here. So we have in here all of this type of stuff, engineering, all of the automation stuff, engineering, designs. So the more detailed you can be in this section, the more accurate the AI will become. So you want to make sure you fill that out as well. We can also do a similar thing with tools. So we've added in all of our tools here that we use, and it can match up the tasks with the tools as well. We also have our AI models. So every time a new AI model comes out, then we can add them in here very easily, which means we don't have to go inside our make.com automation. So we've got 3 automations here for this workflow. We don't have to go inside to update those. And in videos 3, 4, and 5, I think I'm going to go into these automations in detail so you can see how each of those are built. I'm also going to go into the tables that we've built behind the scenes of these interfaces so that you can see how they were built as well. But the purpose of this video is we're just going to do a demo and we're going to work through it. So, okay, so we can now come in and start to plan this product launch. So here we just choose the task, which is the product launch. We've got our description. We don't have any extra context. We've chosen our team. We can add in our tools if we want. So we're going to add in Airtable. We're going to add in Make. We're going to add in Canva. We're going to add in Miro board. We're going to add in Klaviyo for email marketing. Descript will be used for video editing. We're going to do a circle for community. We're going to add it to WordPress for our website. We actually need to add funnel kit and gravity forms. So there's extra context I need to add, which I see even just doing this helps me understand where I'm missing. We actually don't need Help Scout. StreamYard, Smart Suite. Cool. So I think that's all we need, but the extra context is we will also sell a template as is, so we also need to set up a form in Gravity Forms so that if people purchase a done for you option for the template, then we can get all the credentials that we need so we can set it up inside of their own accounts. So next we come down to optimize our AI output. The big fundamental shift that we've had in our thinking over the last 18 months now when building AI automations is we want to give the user inside of a database control over their prompts. Because what I see most people doing on YouTube is a lot of the prompting is getting done inside of make.com or inside of the N8N modules, which doesn't allow a good user experience. Because imagine if you install this on a client's thing and they want to optimize the prompt themselves, then they actually have to go inside the make.com automation, the N8N automation, and it just takes so much time. So we're actually building our prompts inside of Airtable, putting them inside of the workflows. Like in this one, sometimes we'll have them in our brand settings interfaces. And that allows the user, the customer, to then optimize the prompts themselves. They don't have to log in somewhere else. And then we also give them our suggestion of that prompt, and then they can go ahead and change it if they wish. So we're just going to leave those as is. We spent a bit of time fixing up all of those. And then we're going to choose our AI model. So like I said, we have our AI models table here, which we can then easily add in an AI model by completing 4 different fields, and a new AI model is then added. So if we come back into our project here again. So for this one, we're going to do, let's do Claude 3.7 Sonnet Thinking, so the reasoning model. And then let's run this project now and get our first AI output project plan draft. So you can see that as it was running, it said AI writing here in this status. That's another thing that we've been doing is we've been building the workflows so that the AI has a status update so you can see where it's at. And now it says complete. And we've got our first draft here of the things that need to be done to complete this AI TubeKit launch. So potential approaches start with product finalization, then marketing, then sales infrastructure, begin marketing while finalizing product components, then set up a sales system, develop all components simultaneously, use a phased approach. Cool. So suggested approach, a parallel development track with clear owner responsibilities is most efficient. So it's now gone ahead and it's linked up all of the different tasks that need to happen and who should take care of that. So what we would actually do at this stage is we would come in and we would check that the right tasks are getting assigned to the right person. And if we need to, we can add in more tasks down the bottom here as well and assign it to those right people. So this is an important part. What I noticed is when the old version, when we first started, is we try to do it all in the one go. And a lot of times when we're doing automation, that's what we try and do. We try and get the final outcome in just one prompt or one execution. And it doesn't always work like that. You need some human intervention at different stages. And especially with project planning, it can get very particular in terms of who does what, in terms of what tasks need to be done. So here, it's very important that we go through and look up all of these things. And we made this first draft as easy as possible with just bullet points. So when we first did this, we actually had a full long output that was very hard to read. Whereas now we can see very easily at a high level what tasks are suggested. Does that make sense? Is it assigned to the right person? Okay, great. If it is, then let's go and continue now with the final project plan. So here we're going to come down and it's going to plan it out now in a little bit more detail. So here we can use the same model and we're just going to go execute final project plan. And we can see now that's changed to AI writing and we'll have the final project plan here in a minute or so. Now, while we wait for that, like I said, this product is available on the website. If you are interested, it doesn't cost that much. And everyone who purchases any type of product from us actually gets free access into an online community where you get to learn from others in the space as well who are doing really cool things. Plus, in the community, we have a few bonus free templates like a metrical automation and a team tracker and a couple of other things. We also have like 5 or 6 expert masterclasses and different sessions where I go deep into how we mind map these types of workflows. And we'll occasionally do some future classes and masterclasses and stuff like that as well. So all of that is included when you purchase any product from us, and it's not a subscription. So that makes it even better. Let's dive back in. Okay, so that took maybe 60 to 90 seconds to complete, and now we have our full AI TubeKit launch project plan. So it's basically taking these same steps as what was up here, and it's just giving it a little bit more detail. So we've got step 1, we've got the description, we've got the start and end date, we've got who's responsible for that, and we've got a description of what they need to do. So in theory, as long as we've done the planning right, we should have all of this set up in the right way with the proper descriptions that we need. And like I said at the start, remember, if you have some of these plans, so like let's say for the first month, you go through and you do a bit of editing on all of these types of steps and, give the AI more context of what you're using each of the tools for, what team members are doing what in the business. Then you can begin to add more information into their profiles. So you'll be able to add more information into their responsibilities and stuff here. You'll be able to add more information into what we use these tools for. And you'll be able to add more context into each of the planning contexts. So eventually in a month's time, once you've done a little bit of extra work to build up all of the knowledge that you need for this type of workflow, then this section down here should be absolutely perfect. That's the huge amount of value that we have by building out these types of workflows. So let's say all of that we're very happy with, and we want to now distribute those tasks to our team members. And this is in Project Command 1.0. We didn't have anything like this. This is a really great addition where now we can actually just go, okay, let's simply distribute those tasks to our team members and then hit distribute tasks. And we have an automation that then reads this, splits up all of these steps and begins to distribute these tasks to our team. So from here, in order to get to that, then we just come across into our projects. Let's just go to the Kanban view. We're going to open that up and we're going to open up our AI TubeKit product launch. And then we can see all of this same information now in this dashboard here as well. But in a second, we'll begin to see all of the tasks drop into the task section down here with the assignee attached to those tasks as well. So this is going to take a little while, but each task is now just going to drop in. It's going to automatically assign it to the right person so that you don't have to be assigning each individual task yourself. So that's still going, and you can see they're continuing to drop in now because based on just a couple of team members, then that's just assigning to a couple. But if you have more team members, then you get the point that it would assign those tasks to that person as well. And if we click in, then we can see the task descriptions here. We can link in any SOPs, which I'm going to get to in just a moment. If you need to link those into the actual system as well. And it also just adds in a bit of extra information that we need, like the start and due date and all of the different tools that could actually be used in this process as well. So a very effective way to be planning projects in a much more streamlined and automated way. So let's look at some of these other dashboards in a little more detail so that you can see how we build out this entire system. Let's just dive into now the brand settings. So with every product that we build, we create a brand settings or brand assets tab where we can add in a little bit about the brand. We can also add in the language here. So if you are using any language that is supported by the LLMs, then you just add that language here, and we have the prompt set up so it will generate an output in the language that you choose. You can have a brand assets folder if you need to. That's like a Google Drive if you want to link to something. We have our templates here for the prompts, so you can change them in here, and then all of the different projects under that brand. We also then have our team members. So we have our team members, add a photo if you want, but the big thing here with our team members is really filling out the responsibilities. So what are the people in your team good at and responsible for? That's how the AI knows how to match people up with the actual plan that it creates. Again, we went through this briefly earlier, but also then for tools and software, and these plus buttons up here are the way that you add in new tools. So as you add new tools to your stack, then you just add them in here. Again, we use OpenRouter. So if you come into openrouter.ai, it's an easy way when you're developing to just build in any model that you want. So we can literally just add a new model by just clicking this plus button here, adding in the model name, adding in the OpenRouter code, the max tokens that we want, and hit go, and we're good. We have that new model to work with. We've already gone through some of these, but we have all of our project pillars. So you can add in as many pillars as you want. And these are like your big projects or your business pillars. So we add in those here to help structure the system a little bit better. We have our project ideas, which we've been to, and then our planning project workflow, which we just went through. So after you start planning all of those projects, then they'll be in the in-flights dashboard, and each of these will begin to fill out as you do have those projects in flight. We also have a dashboard here, so you can see it visually laid out. And the big things that I'm looking at are, in the table, like how many ideas do we have, how many to do, how many in planning, how many are actually being completed. And we want to see the big number that I was looking for, and same for this is probably like the big selling point for our client as well, is they want an easy way to see overdue projects. For some reason, like when we use ClickUp, they made that so hard to see, which it just blows my mind as to why they make the most important stats so difficult when it comes to these software tools. Then we have a couple of different views for our projects. So this view would only be available if you're using Airtable Premium. If you're not using the Premium, you'll still get the Kanban view. And same for tasks, has the schedule view and the Kanban view as well. But then we thought, okay, well, let's add in the SOP database so that as we're building out the different things that we're doing in our projects and the workflows and the ways that we do things, they can be in the same system as the project management tool as well. And this is like such a big thing that I think a lot of these project management tools miss. You've got your P's in one place, you're planning projects in another place. You're then usually moving Google Docs into the project plans. Like everything is just everywhere. So the whole point of building these systems inside of Airtable is so that we have one single source of truth, and so that we can adapt our workflows to be specific for our business without having to hire developers. And we can just do it ourselves with no code, with a little bit of database structuring and some different AI automations to make these systems work for us. This is the whole point of why we're building these types of things. And the smartest business owners are really understanding that as well. They're sick of having 33 different tools all over the place where you have to have context switching between all of those tools. So that's why we built the SOP database. So this is here. And you can essentially structure this in any way that you want. So we just structured it in these ways because we thought this would be pretty simple. Like most businesses have revenue and acquisition. Most businesses have operations and tech, product and delivery, and so forth. So we have all of these down here as well that you can begin to use. And if you need to find any of those particular keys, then you just come into the dashboard over here on the left and you can search for them. So it doesn't matter if you have a 3, 10, 100, 300, like it's very easy to then find all of the SOPs. Now let's just dive into the databases. So the first part with any real AI tool, especially if you're building for a client, when it comes to automation, is that you want to have some databases to work from. You could use things like Google Sheets if you wanted to, but they're just not as good as Airtable. Even the Airtable free version is way better than Google Sheets. The way that we've structured this, and we structure a lot of our products builds for clients in a similar way. We have the brand assets tab. This is everything that you should feed into the AI in order for the AI to understand the brand. Now, I'm just going to run through some of these fields here. I'm probably not going to go through all of them. But if you do have any interest in some of these, if you do want to build this system yourself, you could pause the video at certain times, understand the fields we have here, and begin to build this out yourself. If you don't want to build this out yourself, on our website, there's a template. It costs a couple of dollars and it will save you 40, 50, 60 hours of build work. You can have our templates and build on top of those. If you are an agency or wanting to build these for somebody else, you could take our templates and sell them for 20 times more than what we're selling them to you for, just like we did to this client that we built this project for. So number one is we can do this in any language. As long as the AI model supports the language you're choosing, you can put in any language and the AI automations will reference that language. We give it some context about our brand. We give it a few different types of prompt ideas. Another thing is that we don't want to be building all of our prompts inside of the automation tools. We want to give the client or the user some flexibility so they can adjust these prompts if they want. So these are all the things that we add into the brand assets, which become the pillar for every product that we do. And then we think about the most important things that we need when it comes to building out these databases for a tool like this. Another one that we always add in as well is our AI models. We use a tool called OpenRouter. OpenRouter is an aggregator that pulls in all of the different LLMs that are out there so that if you are building any type of product, doing any development work, then by simply selecting or adding a code into the workflow, into your make.com automation, into your N8N automation, you can use any model that you want. If we come back to this list, we can see here that we have Claude 3.7, we have O1 Pro, we have Grok, we have some of the O3 models. So like we can then update these. So like there's probably a more recent model now as well, which is Gemini. So if we just type in Gemini, let's go with Gemini 1.5 Flash Pro. Now, if we wanted to add this, all we need to do is copy that code, come across, add a new record in here. It then creates that. The developer account is OpenRouter. We put that code in there again. We add in our max tokens and our temperature. Max tokens here, 8,000. And our temperature, I like to keep super low because we are planning projects. We don't want it to be creative. Basically, temperature is how creative you want the model to be. We've now integrated that model into our system. So we can use Gemini in any of our workflows now. That's how cool these types of databases are when we begin to link records into our workflows. As you watch videos 2, 3, and 4, that's where you'll really start to understand what I mean by this. We then have our project pillars. So the way that we were planning this out with a client was, okay, let's take all the main project pillars that you have in your business. These are like marketing, sales, operations, those types of things. We have those as pillars, and then we have our projects, we have our tasks. So we link those tasks together, and we have our team members because we want to give the AI some context about our team. We have our tools and software, and we added in an SOP database as well, which doesn't have much relevance to the AI automations, but it's a good place to keep everything in one area. So these are the tables that we decided to build. Now, coming back, let's start with project pillars. Before I dive into all of the fields in the table, I want to show you something that we talk about all the time. And there's a few key things here in our AI automation blueprint, some of the key principles that we follow. Like I said, the first thing when we're building these automations, we need to think about database structuring. So we have our foundational databases, which I just talked about, which is our AI models, our brand assets, and so forth. Then we have our creation databases. When we get started with those, what I like to do is find the biggest domino we're trying to figure out. For the client, the biggest domino, if we come into like the final project, was we wanted to plan projects and assign tasks. So this workflow here, it takes in all of the information from the top. You choose and add your team, then choose our AI model. We get the output draft, and then we do a final push of the final project plan once we've done a little editing. The domino for this one was figuring out all the fields we needed to capture to plan these projects. The projects needed somewhere to capture the ideas. As an entrepreneur, you probably understand you have a million ideas every single year, and we need a better way to prioritize those. So the way that we did that in this final version here, we use something called the ICE framework, so impact, confidence, and ease. Anytime you have an idea, you add in a description of what that is, you add in a hypothesis of why you think that would be great, and then you give it a score. How impactful will this be to your business? What is the confidence you can actually execute this well, and how easy is it to get it done? That will then give you an overall score, and you'll be able to prioritize based on some numbers. The numbers are dependent upon what you add in there, so you can game the system a little bit, but at least gives you a better system than just having a whole bunch of bullet points somewhere on your computer that you don't really come back to too often, or you start to prioritize the wrong things because they're a little bit easier to do or less intimidating to do, and so forth. So number one is like we started with that. How do we just capture all of that stuff? So we built that out. We have our description, we have our hypothesis, we have our extra context. Extra context could be as simple as a couple of sentences. The extra context could be as detailed as an entire project plan that you did 2 years ago that was pretty decent, and now you just need to plan that out again for this project with a few different team members and so forth. So that's what we were looking for. And then we added in our fields for the scoring. So impact, confidence, and ease. These are all just number fields. And then we could use that to create an overall rating. So this is a formula summing each of those fields and then dividing them by 3. The output we should get is 6.67. We can actually do a couple of decimal places. I like to do that for this field. So let's just add that in. Now we can see all of these different overall ratings. What we can do inside the interfaces is filter or sort that field by the overall ratings. In this instance, the second one here would actually be at the top. That means any of the projects that rise to the top, then they're probably the ones that we want to try and prioritize first before some of the others that are less impactful to the business. So that's what we did. We got all of those things built in. We started to play around with how that would look. And then from that point, we can then build the AI automations on top. So in order to push it into AI, and I'm going to come back into these scenarios soon, we have step 1, step 2, and step 3 here, which is the plan project, the final project plan, and a way to distribute all of the project plan tasks automatically into the system as well. So I'm going to come back to those. But in order to get the AI to understand that, we had to integrate the AI components, which is the AI model. So we simply added in a linked record. If I just do this again, we got a linked record, we can link to the AI models. We can now select an AI model in this workflow and pull it into this table so that we have the AI model in the record. The record is the row across in the table here. We can just pull that in here. Now we use these fields from the AI models table called lookup fields. If I right click on here, we can add lookup fields, which means all of these fields that we had in the AI models table are available for us to choose here. Now, why do we want to use lookup fields? The reason is because we want a single source of truth. When it comes to database structuring, you only want a single source of truth. Like you want one field in the entire database that if you update it one time, it changes in every single workflow. So if we come back to here and we look at the max tokens, for example, when I set the max tokens and the temperature, if I come across into our AI models and I change this to 7,000 one time, and I come back into this table here again, it's changed here in this row as well. So this is what we call a linked record. This is the most important part to understand when it comes to database structuring. You only ever want to have one source of truth in your workflows at any one time. The reason is, let's say you have a really complicated database where you have 100 different tables and you need to use this open router code in 100 of them. Imagine if you didn't link in this record and you had to update your AI model, you would have to go into 100 different tables and update that 100 times manually. Whereas now we just add this in here one time and it updates all 100 at the same time. So that's why learning database structuring is so important. So if we come back into our interfaces now, we can see all of those fields that I just mentioned are in here. And then if we open this up, this is where we begin to plan the project a little bit better. So we have all of these fields at the top, which I was talking about. And then it's like, okay, if we're planning out this project, then we actually want that to be a certain project pillar, let's call it. So we need to come in and we go, how do we structure this? You could have a single select field. If we just open up a single select, you could have operations, marketing, sales, all of that. It probably would work fine. But the benefits of having it in its own table is that we could then link the tasks back into the projects. We're thinking more long-term here. If we want to break down the data by how many tasks do we currently have open for our automations project, if we had it in a single select field, we wouldn't be able to see that easily. We could probably do some filtering, but it just wouldn't be as easy. Whereas now, if we open up our interfaces and we come into our projects, let's go into our Kanban. So we have our projects here. We can then click into our tasks. So now if we open up this interface and look through all of these, because we've linked the record in automations, for example, we can find that task here and then we should be able to click into it. It looks like we forgot to allow that. Let's just allow that. If we click on this here and then we click allow, it allows us to go directly into this project. I'll just publish that so it's available. Now we have access to that project from our project pillars section. If I click into this, I go directly into that project. This is fundamental software development. We need to understand the end goal so we can start to develop early on how we're going to get there. If we built a single select, there's no chance we could have built that into the interface at the end. So these project pillars is quite simple. So we have our projects tab, we have the all tasks, which is linked to another record or table. We have the number of assigned tasks, the number of completed tasks, the total tasks, and the percentage of tasks done, which is a formula of number of tasks done divided by total tasks. And then you format that as a percent using the formatting field. Very easy to set up. We come back into our projects now. We've got our core pieces, right? We've got our project plan that we need. We've got the AI model available. We've got our project pillar. Let's have a quick look in our interfaces again. And we're moving down. So next we're like, okay, if you're planning projects, then we probably need a start and end date, right? So we're going to add those two fields in, which are very easy to do. But the most important things to do, and this is where I'd see pretty much all task management tools failing big time, maybe Monday.com do it in a kind of decent way, is we can actually assign team members and tools to each of the tasks. So in order to do that, we actually need to do a similar strategy where we have our own tables for those types of things. If we go to our team members, we can add a team member database. In this field specifically, responsibilities, we can list all the things this team member is responsible for in our organization. We can also add in availability of like how much time they have available each week. Are they full-time, part-time contractor? And then we simply just add in first name and last name, and then you can add your users for your team into this section. So what that does is if we come back into here, so let's say we're scoping out this one here, which is Plan and Scope AI newsletter project. And let's just say everybody on the team is included. This pulls in information from the team members table. Let's come back into here. We've selected our team field, which is back here. If I open this up, all of these team members have been selected. And what that does is this is also one where we can add in lookup fields. So we can pull in the responsibilities of that team member. We have team members responsible for this project, John, Dolly, Sally, and all of the responsibilities or skills that they have. So we pull that into the system, and then we can actually split or like send it all. So we use this roll up field here. We're concatenating all of the values from our team members and rolling up the values into a field. So basically it just means it joins it all together, all of these stuff together, so that we can send this into the AI. So the AI will then have a prompt that says, let's go back to the interface because it's easier to explain. The AI has a prompt that says, here's the project name, here's the description, here's the hypothesis as to why we think this is going to be a great project. Here's the extra context that you need. This is the start date and the end date of the project. And these are all the team members and their responsibilities for this project. We can also do the same for tools and software. You add in, Airtable, what we use it for. You have your pillar, which is for operations, and we just link to the website. So we use that so it can align the team members with the right software tools, with the entire context of the project, to then plan that project out, to create a team member plan. Now, I think you're starting to understand how this structure is very impressive when it comes to planning projects very easily with AI. And especially if you have previous project plans that have the right team members structured out, then project planning goes from a few hours per week to literally a few seconds per week in terms of planning and the ability to create these types of plans. So that's the base structure as to how we got started. And that was basically how we got the first one started. Now, what we found was that we would plan with AI automation, and very rarely would it get it correct. It's probably partly our fault. We weren't giving it enough information and didn't have all of the information, the old templates. So partly our fault. But also, secondly, is if you are using AI inside of the ChatGPT dashboard, then very rarely do you do one prompt and get the output that you want. We're usually iterating on prompts a few times in order to get the output we're actually looking for. So if that is the case in the dashboard, then why are we not replicating that inside of our AI automation workflows? So that's basically what I got to with the rest of the workflow. If we come back into the interface, we see here we have our AI outputs in this section. I think I even called it at some point like draft AI output. And then we have our final project plan. So our draft comes into here. So we need a field to send the first draft, the output back into Airtable. So that'll all come into here. And then what we do from here is some editing. We make sure the right team members are in the right place. We might remove some stuff. It always tries to add in legal stuff to the project plans for some reason. So we remove that. And then once we have a better structure of who does what, we create a final project plan in this format here, structured in a way that allows us to assign the tasks automatically using this next automation down here. So we needed those few extra fields. We needed a new prompt field for our final prompt, our final project plan output, and a new trigger for assigning those tasks to the right team members. Plus, then we needed somewhere to send those tasks. So if we come back into our database structure, then we added all of those fields. We've got our main project plan automation here, which is a formula. This formula is used so that if you don't have all of the fields completed, then that plan project button won't work. So you need to have the AI model completed. You need to have the prompt template filled out. You need to have the project plan prompt filled out. You need to have all of those things filled out in order for that plan project to run. Then once you have the final output, that's when the final output formula says, if you have all of those things, then you're allowed to run the final project plan. So this is just a few building techniques that we picked up along the way. We were finding that people were finding it hard to understand when to click these buttons. So we added formulas to say that only if this field is filled out with some information, then the button is allowed to be pressed. So it just allows people to work through this workflow a little bit easier. And something that we always do with our AI workflows is we add in an AI status. Here, once we start planning, we want to see where it's at. So we set up some fields inside of make.com, which I'm going to get to in the next video. We add in a status update when the automation begins. As soon as it starts, it updates it to AI writing. It might spend 1 to 3 to 5 minutes completing, and it will stay on AI writing. And then once it's done, it will change the status to AI complete. So this is just really good building techniques so that the user understands what's actually going on in the background. The worst thing is if you press a button and the AI is running and you have no idea if you're supposed to wait, if it's glitched out, what's going on. So we just add in a status field. Then we have our AI model here for distributing the tasks. We can do simple distribution or granular distribution. It would depend on whether there's just a few tasks to distribute, then you go simple. If you have a massive multi-month project plan, then you can go granular and they split it up a little bit better. And then we can distribute those tasks. And once that's done, it will move into the next phase. So that's 90% of the automation to get it through this part. This is the big domino. As soon as we figured this part out, then we could come in and we can complete the rest of the workflows and tables. The only thing left is once we've planned that project, we need to send those tasks somewhere. If we are sending those tasks into a database, we actually needed a different table for it to go into so that it was easy to create a new record rather than linking it back into our project plan record. So we have here a task table, and that is linked to our projects, our brand assets. It has a status, it has assignees, it has our task description. So these are broken down based on the AI output. It has a start date and an end date. The AI also assigns a start date and an end date based on the timing that you have for your project. So remember, we come back in here. So it knows we've got like 4 or 5 days to complete this task. If we have 10 tasks, we need to split this up over those 5 days. The AI understands it needs to do certain things in a certain order, and it will assign those tasks deadline dates based on the workflows. Any related SOPs we can link into here as well. It has some of the main things that the team might need for this particular task. So if we come into our interfaces, how does that look? We can have a look at it in a Kanban view. And if we open up a task for Perform AI TubeKit workflow diagnostic, we've got all of this information here. It tells us what project this is for, the status, start and end date, task description, who's involved, and any related SOP can be added into here as well. So let's say we had an SOP for this task, we could add it in so that if our team members not fully understanding what they need to do or what this task is for, need a reminder of the SOPs, we can link them very easily. So that's like the bulk of this project management tool. A lot of people have SOPs for what they're actually creating as well. So we decided to add in an SOP database, which is very simply done. It has an overview tab with a few different tools, manuals, operations and tech, all of those types of things. And that's built into a very simple table. So we have our SOP name, what pillar is it for, the objective, is it a video or PDF that you can link to? Is it, this client in particular was using Google Sites, so do you want to link it to Google Sites? Screenshots, so do you have any screenshots to help explain this task? We can link it to these tasks and have a last updated field so that we know how recent it was created or updated. So that's what the SOP table looked like, and that turned into an interface. So anytime somebody has a question, they come into this table, into this interface here, they can see the SOP for that particular task. They can easily search for the SOPs in this bar here, and it makes it very easy then to add into the tasks as they are creating them. So that's how we built this interface or this product for our client. And they're very happy with the results. Like I said, a large part of these AI automations is the value of the information that you input into the system. So if you have really great context, great descriptions, and some existing tasks that you can use as references, then a tool like this becomes incredible for shortcutting how long it takes to project plan, to basically like automating the task assignment completely, which very few of these other tools actually do. A tool like this becomes very valuable, and you're not having to have another subscription in Monday.com. You're using Airtable, which we're building basically our entire business through. Well, we have tons of workflows now that we use every single day. This is the future of development and running businesses, building your own custom workflows that work exactly for you. The pitch I always have for every product that we create is use what we have as a template. Like we've done 50, 60 hours of development work to build this template. And the beauty of building inside of Airtable, using make.com, using N8N, is that you can now take a template like this and add in any field, any type of automation that you want. You can't really do that when it comes to ClickUp. When it comes to Monday.com, there are some fields you can do it in, but it's not great. Usually you have to have a much higher plan to do the things you want to do. That's where Airtable really shines. For just a couple of dollars to grab a template like ours, you can get started with all of the hard work done, and you just do the customizing on top in order to get it exactly how you want. Now let's plan projects with AI using an AI automation inside of make.com. And this is video number 3 of a 6-part series where I'm showing you how to build an entire project management system yourself using tools like Airtable and adding in AI components that some of the biggest project planning tools don't even have using make.com. It's actually quite a simple one, but there's a few understandings that we need to gather first about the database structuring before we can actually get to this automation component. So we trigger most of our automations via a webhook. So if we come back to the flow of this particular project management system, then we can see that when we add our project ideas, they get added into a database. That database is the projects database, And then from there, we don't want to move it into a different database. We actually want to keep it in the same table inside of Airtable and trigger that information to then move it into a different table within that database. So that's basically what we're going to go over now. So here in this project's table, we've actually got all the information added in for the description of the idea that we're going to work on. We've got the hypothesis and we've got the extra task context. So here we now want to be able to trigger that AI automation some way. So we simply trigger it by a webhook, and then we can add in a button that triggers this automation. So let's have a look at that first and foremost. So the button has a formula attached to it that says, if AI model, if prompt templates, and if prompt template project plan, if there is something in those fields, then concatenate, which means basically join together the webhook. And so this webhook actually comes from make.com. So that's how it gets triggered. We send it in via this webhook, but we send it in with some extra information like the Airtable base ID, project table ID, the distributed task table ID, team members table ID. So we can gather up all the information that we need and send it all into the automation at one time. So this is a little hack that we found after we've been building for 18 months now inside of Airtable and make.com. What most people do inside of make.com when they're building with Airtable is if they want to get a record, then they'll use the get a record module. If they want to create a new record, then they'll use a create a new record. But the issue with that is, let's say you're building this for clients. If you were to use those modules, then you would have to remap those fields every single time. So instead of the installation of this automation taking a couple of minutes, which happens when you install one of our templates, it literally takes, this automation would take you 30 seconds to set up. Then what you would have to do is remap every field. So if we have a look at, this N field here, actually that's not a good example because there's just 2 fields to map, but there's some of them. This one would actually be quite easy because there's not a lot to map. But some of them, we have like a dozen, maybe 2 dozen fields that need to be remapped into Airtable. So if you were to do that manually, firstly, the system is so slow, so it will take you forever, but it'll probably take you like 30 minutes to set up this one automation. Whereas what we use are the API call modules, and then we just simply use JSON in order to update the fields. So that's why it becomes so important to actually use and create. So that's really tip number 1, is understanding that we can build much faster if we're using API calls and adding a little bit of JSON scripts into the actual system themselves. Now if you don't know JSON, I didn't know JSON when we got started, we can learn it very quickly and easily, but ChatGPT can do a lot of the work. I'm going to talk about more of that in a second. But if we come back into here, then we have our formula set up with our webhook. So that's going to trigger the information into make.com from Airtable. So then we simply just have a webhook response, which closes the window. So if we trigger, let's just unlink this and let's just go run once. So if we trigger this, it opens up a new window. And then if we add that response, then it closes the window automatically. So you can see now, if we open up this, we've got our base ID, our table ID, our distributed task table ID, our record ID, and our team members table ID. That is all sent in now via the webhook. So that allows us to then send information back to any of these other tables within the database as well, because we now have the ID. So we can send it into any table very easily and effectively. So when we're setting up this base for the first time, then we actually put these into our brand assets tab. So if we come across in the brand assets tab, we can see these different fields here. So this app ID will match the app ID that's in the URL string of the Airtable. So that app ID is going to be for the entire app, like the entire base here. But then we have different IDs for our different projects tables. So if I click across into AI models, it has a different ID. If I click into project pillars, it has a different ID. So we grab that from the URL string in the second part of the URL, after the / there with that starts with TBL, and we add all of those in. So we can send all of that information in the very one webhook. So we can send information back into Airtable very easily, no matter what we want to do. We capture that webhook so the window closes automatically. We just have this script here that says window.close, and then we click save. Then we want to get that information from Airtable. So we use a method get, and we don't need to add anything else in besides getting that information. So if I unlink now and I run that automation again, if we open up this bubble here, we can see that if we go to body and then fields, we can see now it's pushed in all of these fields from the actual table, from the database into make.com. So now we can reference all of these fields inside of our automation and our prompting so that we can begin to build out the rest of the workflow. So all of these things are in here. So what we actually do when we're building out is like, we've got to figure out what is all the information we need inside of this workflow. Like, what are all the things we need the AI to know and understand so we can feed those fields in. If we come back in now, once we have all of those built out, we actually set them in variables. So we add them into the variables field here. Like, okay, looks like there might be a bit of an error, which is pretty interesting. So let's just remap that task idea to make sure everything's going to work correctly. Cool. So we just remapped that just in case there was a glitch. But basically what we've got here is we set all of our variables. Now, when I first started building, we never really set variables up front. And it's okay for small automations just like this, because not a lot really, there's not too much that's going to change. And if it does change, then it's actually really easy to remap the rest of these workflows. But we have some more advanced automations that have multiple different routes. They might have hundreds of different modules, and you use the variables or the fields inside of Airtable multiple times. So if you were to ever have to update that field, like maybe you make an update in the system or something changes, then you would have to go through and remap everything in the entire system again, or like at least that field again. Whereas if you set all your variables up front, if you ever need to change that field for some reason, like I did just now, then you only need to update it here. And then you use those variables in all of the future prompts. So that's the benefit of like using this for one extra operation. It's totally worth it. It makes all of the extra building and error fixing and stuff and debugging so much easier later on. So we set those variables, and then we like to give the users a bit of an understanding of what's happening. So we set our AI status to AI writing here in this module. So that will then show inside of the dashboard that the AI is actually doing something. Because if you don't set this status, then no one really knows if it's working or not, and if it's actually executing. It's very hard to determine. So we just simply update that field, and it makes it so much easier. It's a much better user experience. Then we get into our AI modules now. So we use OpenRouter, and OpenRouter is a great tool to be able to, it's like an aggregator. It pulls in all of the different AI models so that when you're developing, you can choose any model that you like in your workflows. And we've talked about that in the database structuring, and I think we talked about it in video 1 and 2. So you can go back and review those of how we've built that into the system. But we have our OpenRouter module that then we can begin to map in, or like we can begin to prompt. So the way that we structure this is pretty much every prompt that we send in has context, which is about the brand, task idea, description, hypothesis, context, the impact score. Then we have our project prompt structure, like the prompt itself. So remember that prompt was built inside of Airtable to give the user the ability to change that prompt whenever they want. The big difference I see in those building really great systems, AI automation systems, versus those just building simple AI automations with no real thought to the end product, is that most people are putting most of the prompt or all of the prompt inside of make.com or NAN. It has its place and time in order to do that, but to build really great systems that customers love, that clients love, that make it so much more user-friendly, that makes it very easy to update, you want to give as much control over the prompting inside of the table, inside of the database, inside of the tool that they're operating it from. You don't want to be giving all of the prompts inside of the automation tool itself. It's not what they're designed for, but most people get it wrong. So once we have the main prompt inside here, we add in a little bit more of like I'll call this our system prompts, like the back end stuff that people don't really need to see, which is basically just saying like, here's how we want to get the output. We don't want any extra context, times, and dates, and so forth. Then if we come down a little bit further, we have our AI model mapped in here. So that's because we're linking this AI models table into here. So if I scroll across, we should be able to find this here somewhere. So we have our AI model table from over here linked into this record, so that we can choose, if we click this plus button, we can choose any of these models here. And then we have the AI model plain text. So this is the text that we send into and map into the automation. So by mapping in this text exactly as that is into this AI model field here, then that's how the correct model gets chosen for this workflow. And this is how we can switch models so easily depending on what we want to do, depending on if a new model comes out. We have a few extra settings here as well, which is enable automatic fallback. So that means if that model is overloaded, it will fall back to a different model. We have our max tokens. We have our temperature here, and we typically leave the rest of the settings as is. The one big difference though, when we are using these API calls versus if we were to just add in an Airtable module like create a record. So now we have to send, once this AI output has been generated, we need to send this back into Airtable. Now, what most people do is we go, okay, create a record inside of Airtable. And again, if you were to do that, you would have to remap the entire thing every single time you imported this blueprint into another account. So it just doesn't make any sense if you're building for clients, if you're selling templates, any of that type of stuff. It doesn't make any sense because you're basically giving yourself 10 times more work than what you need to. So we actually send that back in via JSON here in an API call. And remember, we got all of that. We sent all of our base ID, table ID, and record ID in the webhook. So we just need to match that into the right table. And we use a patch response so that updates the existing record. So we have get is getting the information out of Airtable. Post is posting into a new table and creating a new record. And patch is then updating an existing record. So we're updating this existing record with AI complete, but we're also updating the AI output project plan with a JSON string. So that's the one big difference that you need, is that we need to turn it into JSON before we send it back into Airtable. Now, sometimes we can do it inside of here. So if we go enable JSON mode, sometimes it will actually create the right formatting that we can send directly into Airtable without this module. But we found that it was a little bit temperamental. So we found that just adding the JSON module in here made it so much more consistent to then send it back into Airtable itself. Now that might improve over time. This module here is continually being updated and improved over the amount of, the last 12 to 18 months that we've been using it. So that's basically how this automation works. Now, if you do buy our Project Command 2.0 template that is on the website, then we'll give you this automation. We'll give you the Airtable template. We'll give you the other automations as well, plus all the education. So you can do that. It's a very small one-time fee. You'll be able to then take this template, use it yourself, but then install it into client businesses for 10 to 20x the price that you pay from us. But all of that will be available inside of the community as well. But that's basically how it works, right? And we just continue to run that over and over again for every system. And that then allows us to create our first draft in the AI output field in this type of workflow. So that's automation number one. And we have two more automations. So we now have a final project plan that takes the first step, and then we have the distribution automation that automatically distributes tasks. So I'm going to talk about those in the next video. This final project plan automation is absolutely key when you are building out an automation for planning projects, because what a lot of people try to do is they try to do the entire workflow in just one go. But what we've seen here is that you actually need some human input after the first draft plan. So we went through the draft prompt in the previous video. Now we need to take this draft prompt here after the user, the customer, the client has gone through and just made sure everything aligns, because AI is good and it's really good if you feed it all the information it needs, but there are still times where you need to have a checkpoint in the process so that you can check that it's doing the right things, because the last thing you want is for the entire workflow to run and for the foundation to not be set up correctly. Because if you don't get it right at the start of the automation, then the final output that you get is going to be nowhere near close to actually being what you need for your project plan anyway. So that's why we have a checkpoint in this workflow to make sure that, okay, we can quickly read these bullet points before we actually plan out the entire project, so that we can make sure that the AI is understanding it correctly. If it's not, then we might simply just add in and change a few details in this workflow here before we create this final project plan. So the final project plan is also added into this database here, or this table within the database that we talked about. So remember, in the last one, we executed that plan project here in this section here, which is a button with a formula that pushes in all the fields that we want. Then we have our execute final project plan button here, which is basically the same. So it's saying that if all of these fields have a value in them, then concatenate the webhook that we're about to talk about and send in all of the table IDs that we need for this workflow to operate. So if we come back into here, then we're doing this here in the final project plan. So we're saying trigger this workflow with webhook, which is the button that we had in the table there, and then run through this automation here. So let's just do a quick test like we did last time. We're going to execute that, and we can see if we open up this bubble, it's added in our base ID, table ID, distributed tasks, and we remember we set all of that up in the brand settings that I went through in the previous video. Then in the second module, it just closes that window out and catches that script. We're using a script, I should say, and then it pulls in the information. It gets the information via this API call with Airtable using the values that we sent in via the webhook here. So that then allows us to get all of that information so we can start to create our variables. So let's just give this an execute now, and we're going to go execute final project plan. And then we come back into our automation, and we can see now it's got all of that information from this first field, or in the body here in fields. So we can now see all the information we had in Airtable inside of our automation, which allows us to use it in the rest of the workflow. What we do all the time now is we set up our variables up front. So in this automation that I'm talking about here, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's very small. So if you ever need to change anything, then it's easier to do. But it's best practice is to set all your variables up front, because you might have automations in future that are much more detailed than this. And you might have a certain variable that's used a dozen times in the rest of the automation. So if you ever need to update it when we set our variables, then you can just update it one time, and then the variable will update throughout the rest of the workflow. So we always want to get into that practice when we're building automations. It's best practice. It helps your clients so much better in future, and it allows you to debug so much easier in future as well. So as soon as we've done that, then we're updating that field by making a patch method request, and we're updating our status to say AI writing. So keep in mind, when we're executing these workflows, we want to give the client or the user some information in the dashboard to say that the AI is actually working on something. So that then updates that before it then goes through and creates the final project plan. So here you can see we're using these variables in this prompt here that we set in a couple of modules earlier. So we're simply just saying, here's the context, you're a project planner. Here's the project plan that we created in automation number 1. Here are the team member roles that we have and that we've pulled in from the team members database. And then we're saying your instruction is to combine both of these and create a detailed task with the start and end dates. And then important, make sure you create those start and end date times to be good times. So you don't want to be giving them due times in the middle of the night when they're probably not working. You want them to be within working hours, essentially. Then we give it an output structure, and that output structure is pulled in from the actual workflow itself. So remember, we said we give our clients the ability to change the output structure if they want. So we automatically populate this field using an automation. The automation can be found in here. And we're simply saying when there's a new project, add templates from the brand conditions. So if brand assets is not empty, update that with the values. So we're updating it with the values from the brand assets throughout here, so that every time a new record is created in the projects table, then it automatically just uploads that prompt. So that gives two benefits. It allows the user to update the field themselves if they want to change it, or if they want to change it permanently, then they can update it in the brand assets, and then the automation is going to continue to run. So again, we always want to be giving as much of the important parts of the prompts inside of the database or inside of the interface so that we can make those changes easily. What most people do, if you look around most YouTubers and people who are building these automations, they're just putting the prompts inside of the AI tool or inside of the automation tools like NAN or Make.com, which works and it looks impressive and it's great. But from a user standpoint, from a client standpoint, it's actually really bad practice, because if they ever need to update it, they have to go into the tool, they have to leave their existing workflow, and it's just so slow and a really bad experience. So by putting the prompts inside of the tables, inside of the database tools, inside of the interfaces, it's so much easier to operate. So we've got that prompt in there now. We're using openrouter.ai. So this openrouter is an aggregator. It pulls in any type of AI model that we want. And then we can simply have our model selected and map in our model here. So we're saying that we're going to map in that model. We have a fallback, which means if that model is overloaded, we can fall back to another one. And we have our max tokens mapped in and our temperature mapped in as well. So we can have full control over the max tokens and temperature from the dashboard as well. Then before we send it back to Airtable with an API call and a patch method, we're going to make sure that it's in JSON. So if anytime you are using Airtable API calls, then you're going to be using this JSON down here. And often the outputs that you get from OpenRouter, even if you select, so it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I talked about this before. You have an enabled JSON mode value here, which should turn the final output, the AI output, into JSON so you can send directly in via an API call. We found it was a little bit temperamental, and that the most consistent way was to actually just create a JSON module using the make modules. Then we send that JSON string into the AI output final project plan field of Airtable, and that just seemed to be so much more consistent. So we just have a bit of a JSON string here. If you ever not really understanding that, ChatGPT is great at helping to create this. If you do use it in ChatGPT, sometimes what it will do, if you have different variables in here, try and wrap a JSON string with your two quotes. But the JSON string actually does that automatically. So we don't want to be adding them in twice. So that's why you can see the quotes around here, this top one, because we're not using the JSON string module output. But in this one, we don't have the quotes because it's actually automatically added in this section, in this variable here. So we click save, and that's really about it. It's a very simple automation in order to produce that final plan. But remember, the reason why we're creating this in 2 steps is so we can have a checkpoint first to make sure that it's on the right track, to make sure it's understanding this correctly. Probably half the time you're going to have to update this, at least in the beginning, until you get better at adding more context in this field here. And then over time, if you're updating your context better and better each time, then the AI will start to understand who does what a whole lot better. Then you have the final project plan here that is structured like this. The other reason why we have this output like this is because we structure it a little bit differently for this final automation here that takes all of that final project plan in the actual dashboard. So it pulls in all of this information, and then it begins to split all of that information into individual tasks and assigns those tasks to your team members automatically. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next video. And make sure you subscribe, because we're going deep into not just this product, but many products in future. This AI automation automatically assigns tasks to your users inside of a project management system that we built for a client. Now, I don't understand why so many of these other big tools like Monday.com, Asana, and Click don't have these types of AI automation features within their tools. It's mind-blowing to me that me and my team can spend, 50, 60 hours building out a more realistic project management system based on what capabilities we have today. So in this video, I talk about how we can actually assign and create tasks with inside of Airtable in the Airtable system that we built, and automatically assign those tasks to our team members after AI has actually already automatically created our project management plan as well. Does that sound pretty interesting? I hope it does, because I have never seen anybody talk about this, but we're going to be diving deep into here. So we've already gone through how the table is set up. We've gone through how the interfaces work. We've gone through how AI creates the project plan by looking at our context, by looking at our team members and our tools, and creates that entire plan automatically. And as always, we start with the same type of method up front, which is we're triggering the automation via a webhook, and we come back into our projects table here. So we have our distribute tasks button, and that button contains a formula with that webhook. So that webhook is here, and then we send in all of the extra information for our different table IDs that we need for this automation to work. And then we have like an extra formula up top here that says only allow this button to be pushed if those fields have something in it. So that's why if I just close out of this, you can see these ones here cannot be pushed because those fields have not been completed. So it just helps the user experience a little bit better when we're actually building, to make sure that the user knows, okay, I need to have these fields filled in before I can actually get to this automation. Because if they don't, then the automation is going to error and everyone's going to get confused. So that's just a little advanced building technique we've picked up over the last 18 months. But if we come back into here, so we're simply saying trigger the webhook, This second one captures the webhook, so it closes the window automatically. We then get the information from Airtable. So we're using an Airtable API call when we're building projects and templates for clients. The reason why is because if you were to use your typical create a record, get a record Airtable module inside of make.com, you would have to remap that every single time that you import it into a new account. The reason why that is important is because if you were to buy our template that we're selling for this project Command OS 2.0, it would literally take you 10 minutes to set up because of the way that we've built it. Whereas if we didn't use API calls when we were creating these templates, the difference in time to set that up would probably be somewhere between 3 to 4 hours. So it's like 5-10x more time to actually set up those templates just because of the way that it was built. So you got to remember that if you are wanting to really become great at this, you've got to think about how can you build these types of tools and these types of blueprints in the best way possible. What you see on YouTube all the time are typically the easiest ways to do things, the things that aren't really built into what I would call like a systems design approach, so that if you ever need to make changes, import them into other accounts, debug them, they're an absolute nightmare. So that's why so many of these automations are not practical at all. The way that we build things and the way that we educate on what we build is by taking a really smart systems design approach so that you're not creating 10 times more work downstream. We're actually eliminating so much work up front by just making things a little bit differently compared to, what most people would typically do. So after we get that information from Airtable, we then want to give the user an idea of what's happening. We're updating the task distribution status to say that it's in progress. So if I come into this workflow now, we would execute this task here from this create team member task workflow. We can choose whether it's going to be simple or granular. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. And then it updates here to say that the task distribution is in progress. So it's essentially saying that the automation is running. We want to give as much information as we can on this interface so the user actually knows what's happening. Now, like I said, we had an option here in this workflow whether to do simple or granular tasks. So we have a explanation of what that means. The main tasks are assigned as is with a short description for simple, and then granular tasks are split up into key steps based on the task details and project info, and then get assigned to the relevant team member. So you want to use these with larger scale projects with longer timelines or higher complexity. Times out of 10, you just need to do simple. Then you might want to do more granular moving forward. But basically, we now have that information to work with. So we come back into here. So we have our 2 routes. So our 2 routes are filtered by what we just talked about, which is simple task list is filtered by that field and saying the text operator equals to simple. Then same on this end. So the text operator equals to granular. So it's just pulling in that information from our Airtable base, and then it's filtering through each route depending on what has been selected. We then pull in the team members from our team member database. So remember, we have our database of all our team members in here, and then we pull that information in so that we can use it to assign the tasks. So that's all it is. It's just a call to get that information as well. We set a few variables for the different team members in here. Then we have those variables available to use throughout the rest of it. So we have in here now the ability to pass this into our first open router. So open router is how we can use any type of LLM in our workflows just with a few simple clicks rather than updating the entire system itself. So we have in here a model selected, and actually what we've done in this one, I forgot about this until right now, sometimes the automations can use different models that are cheaper to run and they still do the job. So like, for example, you don't want to be using a reasoning model to do just a very simple task. So rather than having the model pushed in via the actual dashboard, then we're actually just sometimes we choose which models to use so that we're not using so much AI credits. So that's also another little tip. But we have that set up, and basically what we're saying in here is you're an expert coder with extensive knowledge in JSON. So we're giving it some information about what the JSON is all about. We're giving it the format that we want it to follow. We're giving it the different assignees examples, and we're saying very important, your output is always only JSON, do not add any intro, outro, blah, blah, blah. Here is a good example. And we're giving that information so that the AI knows what to do. Then we're saying, okay, here's the JSON and giving it a little bit more context again. And then here's the task list that we want you to take and begin to output that into the JSON. So we send that output from the AI output into a JSON string, and then we begin to iterate through it. So iterating through each of those tasks in this iterator, which means as it finds that information, so let's open up this, we've got our array of information here that was output from the AI output. So it's all an array. So we want to iterate through each of these arrays and then send them eventually into the Airtable module up the top here. So if we open up, we can see all of that now has been structured in the right way. And then we're just saying, okay, here's the description. We've got the task title. So the task title is already there. It's giving it an option to maybe improve that. We've got our start date. So we have an AI prompt in here to choose a good start date. We're having then also a good end date. So we're giving it all the information it needs to create a start and end date. And then we're asking it to identify the right team members. So here it's actually going through and it's looking at all of the team members that it requires. Not sure why that value is not in there like that. Cool. So then it's saying, here's the list of team members that we have. Then we have only assign a team member from the project assign team members list. Do not add team members who do not appear in the list. Make sure to only assign one person and giving it some extra context down the bottom here. Again, we're just choosing a model that works, that is cheaper to use than what our normal selection is here. And then before we add it into Airtable, we turn some of the information into JSON. So this is the task description to make sure that's added into, turn into JSON before we send it back into Airtable. And then we're saying, okay, go to the distributed task table. So if we come back into here, we have a task table that allows us to now create all of this information here. So you saw how that worked in video number 1, where it was dropping in each task. So that's what this entire workflow is doing, is it then drops in all of the information that we need from, or that we've gathered and created from these AI outputs in this workflow here. And then what happens as soon as it gets through the first one, it comes back to this iterator here and begins to work through collection 2 and then collection 3. Okay, so if you're not entirely following, let's go into the more granular one now and really dive into explaining this a little bit better and seeing how it works. So let's just do a run once on a granular production and we'll check what that looks like. So we come back into our workflow here and let's just bring up the same one again. Then we can compare the two to see how it all works. So if I go down to the bottom again and then I choose granular, and then we're going to distribute these tasks via the granular route. And we can see now, so it comes down, it gets our team members. So basically it's pulling in all the information from that team members record. So we can see here, we've got our first record, it's pulled in, which is the admin person on our team. And it's got all of the roles and responsibilities in here as well. So it's pulling in that information so we can actually use that throughout the rest of the workflow. So we transformed the team members into JSON so we can use it here now. The team members that were assigned to this task or that were responsible for this task in our planning phase. So we've got the 2 team members in there that would need to be added into this particular task. So all of that's been added in, and we've got now our output. So let's have a look in here. Our output now contains this task, day 1, May 12, 8 to 12, Tim and Steve, develop AI TubeKit components, set up. So there's a few tasks within the main tasks. So we've got all of these getting added in here now as well. It's split out across the different days, depending on, the stage that the AI believes they should all be done. We then transform that. So we feed all of that JSON string into this parse JSON, and then we feed it all out as individual arrays. So we can see here, it's all fed out like this. Now, this is where we get to the difference with the granular, which is just like up here, where we were iterating through each of the tasks and then assigning them. That still happens here as well. But if we look at our tasks, there's actually 4 tasks within the main first task. So we're assigning more granular tasks to each of the team members. If we look at this operation now in our first task bundle, it actually has 4 subtasks: develop AI TubeKit, set up make.com, test integration points, document technical requirements. What this second iterator actually does is it splits all of those values into their own bundles or collections. So we can individually assign those tasks on their own. Then it continues to run through the same workflow, which is start and due time. We create a better description, date, identify our team members with AI. We've got an error here. It always seems to happen on a trial run. Let me just fix that up. I'm actually just going to fix this while we're watching, because this is part of automation, right? You need to learn to figure out what the problems are. And I mean, there's nothing obvious there for me right now. It's giving a 422 error, I think it was. The task distribution status. We already almost fixed this before. So basically that field does not actually appear in this table. That field should be in here only, in the update status, in the projects table, and then the task table doesn't actually have that field. So let's come back and trial again. So we can see now it's going to run through, and I'm not going to go through it all again, but we should come up here now in just a moment and see the new Airtable module start to drop them in successfully. So we can see now that it has been added in there successfully. So if we come back into our dashboard and we open up the project, and then if we come down all the way to the bottom with our tasks, so we can see now the tasks are getting dropped in here. And there should be way more tasks. I mean, I should have deleted all the original ones. You might, no, we can't really look at it. But basically, it's now dropping in all of those more granular tasks and assigning them to the right person on the team for that particular task. So we can see here, it's adding task descriptions. It's assigning it to the person. It's got the start and due dates, and it's going to be just building it out way more granular than the original one. But it's still giving a lot of context, right? Like it's still improving the description to make sure that the task is very clear. So the other thing is, we're making sure that we have clear task names within that workflow as well. So the task name and description is getting generated through this process as well, so that we can make sure that, the entire process is done predominantly through AI, but in a way that is beneficial for the business owner, where they have the right checks in place. They can check in, they can make sure the right things are getting planned out by the AI, they can remove things that they don't want, and the AI will then, take over and do huge amounts of work. So like I debated why do I share this in just an automation? Like, surely I can turn this into a project management tool, and even like so many project management tools that came before me, it can probably become an incredible piece of software that people would actually love to use. And you just refrain from trying to clutter the entire dashboard with all of the different non-needed features like ClickUp, like Monday.com, like all of these other tools that are out there. Airtable interfaces are epic. We've built interfaces for so many products now, from Project Command, which I'm going to talk to you about today, to this AI tube kit, to this video workflow, to this AI meme workflow. There's been so many different types of products that we've built interfaces for. And the worst piece of advice when I first got started with Airtable was, don't even think about interfaces until you get your tables perfect. Now, there's some truth to that, but it's actually some really bad advice, because what I found with Airtable interfaces is that the interface allows you to do so much more with a workflow, especially when we're building AI automations, that you just cannot do inside of the tables themselves. So once you understand interfaces, you can actually begin to build an interface first product. And I'm going to explain more about that as I go. Now, the other thing that I want to point out is this video is going to be way more in depth than any of the other Airtable interface videos that you see on YouTube. Because what I've noticed is that a lot of the videos that are getting created are with products that aren't really in the real world. They've just simplified a table, and this usually doesn't even make any sense to a typical business scenario. So it's all of the basic stuff when it comes to Airtable interfaces. If you don't know me yet, my name is Mitch, and I hate to talk about basic stuff. Like, all of my videos go so far in depth that probably to my own demise, because it's not relevant for everybody. I like to teach to the people who have some experience already, who really want to go deep into topics, and they don't want to just learn the surface level stuff. I find that if you can't figure out the surface level stuff intuitively, then this is probably not something that you want to go dive deeper into. Of course, it's all a learning process, but I want to speak to the people that have at least some base knowledge intuitively, and then we start to figure out some really cool techniques and tips and strategies and building techniques that we can use to build some epic stuff like this workflow here. And it's built across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tables within this database here. So we have all of these tables, and now we need to connect them and make them a little bit more beautiful for people to use. Otherwise, team members are not going to use them. Like if you can imagine, like the very first products we were building inside of Airtable, we just had workflows like these, and we were trying to teach our team members and then of course customers how the workflow would operate just from a table like this. It was so hard to do, and no wonder people were getting confused, because even if I look at tables now, I get so confused as to what to do, especially if I've got team members helping to build these out. Whereas if you come into interfaces, then it makes everything so intuitive. Like you can also have, like if we come across to this workflow here, this one here, we can actually add some extra text into the workflows to tell people what to do at each of these steps throughout the workflow. So in this video, I'm going to reverse engineer all of these different interfaces that we've built across the left-hand side here, so that you can understand and go for a really deep dive on building interfaces and understand when to use them, how to use them, why you should use them when building your databases inside of Airtable. Now, there are tools that have similar features. I find Airtable is just the most intuitive right now. So let's dive in. So when it comes to building these products, these AI automation products, we always start out with brand assets. So brand assets are things that we feed into the AI automation all of the time. So things like the language we want it to be in, about the brand. We have a few brand prompts in content workflows like our meme agent or our tube kit. We have things like our brand voice guidelines so that the content comes out in the same way, and a few other things like that. But typically every product is going to have a brand assets tab, because we build these templates so that basically unlimited amount of brands can use them within the one template. So if you're an agency, you can upload all of your brands into here, for example. Not so relevant with the project command product, but definitely for content products. And the different brands might have like different prompts for each of these. So the way we built this is we gave the user the ability to edit their prompts inside of the brand assets tab. So what happens is when they onboard themselves, they add a little bit about their brand in here. And then if they want their prompt outputs from the AI to be a little bit different, then all they need to do is change it in here in these sections. And what these sections do, anytime there's a new record created in our project's workflow, we actually have an automation that says, pull those prompts from the brand assets. So this is an automation inside of Airtable, and it says when there's a new project, add the templates from the brand assets. So it's saying here, if brand asset is not empty, then update this record using these specific fields from the brand assets, and all of them get updated with the templates that we we're just talking about. So any new record that gets created, it gets uploaded. So we want to have the ability to easily change those from here if we wanted to. So that instead of changing the prompts inside of the make.com automation, then we can do it here. We don't have to sign in somewhere else. So we always have things like that inside of our brand assets. So in order to create this tab, then we simply just have what they call I believe it's a record interface. You know, to create interfaces, you just come into interfaces tab, and then over on the left-hand side, we have these little plus signs here to create interfaces and then pages within those interfaces. So the way that we typically structure it is we have a brand settings interface, and then we have a few pages in here. So like if I come across into our tube kit one, so we have a brand settings. This one has a whole lot more different brand settings that we create. Then we have our project command. So like this is where we put our project ideas. This is where we build out the AI workflow for creating the AI project plan and then assigning those tasks. This is where we see all the projects in flight. And then we also have then a final data interface of our SOPs. So all the SOP for this brand is then added into this section here. And we have then individual fields or individual pages inside of the SOP interface for each of the different pillars within the business to make it a little bit easier to navigate. So typically when we're building these types of things, I like to start with the big dominoes first. So the big domino is we need our brand settings. We need our team members and responsibilities, and this can be laid out like this. And then we need our tools and software, and then we need our AI models. So these are all of the brand settings that can get pulled into the workflows. So in order to create those, they're all basically the same. We're using a record pillar or a record page. Let's use the brand assets as the example. So when you create that page, let's just see if we can create a new one. So we'll go record review and we'll go next. And then we attach this to our brand assets. And then from here, we can filter it if we wish. Typically, I don't worry about that unless I have very specific details. I'll just click next. And then in the next, you want to show all of the fields that you want to show on your interface itself. So all of these fields, yeah, they're all fine. I mean, we didn't have anything in the brand assets folder, so let's not worry about that. Let's add the about the brand. Let's add in what else? Maybe just all the projects that we're currently working on, and then the templates, the AI prompt templates. So then we just do brand assets demo and we'll click finish. So now we can begin to edit these. So it gives us all of this information up front, and we have a few options. The interfaces that Airtable provide, they do allow us to make some edits to those interfaces, but we are limited in what we can do in this type of workflow. Now they do have one where you can start it from scratch, and that allows you to do a whole lot more. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But this one here, there are a few things that we can do. So typically, I want to make all of these things editable. So if we, let's see if we can just maybe fit this image size a little bit better. So it's got all of these different attachments. So the different fields within this interface have different ways that we can edit them. First, I want to make sure that all the fields are editable from inside of the dashboard in case we need to update the information. So we're going to do all of that. In the attachment field, for example, we can have different ways we display that image. So I like to actually have it displayed as a hero image and then fit that image to size so it fits in like that. We can also have helper text. So if you need to label as to what this field does or anything like that, you can add the helper text. That's typically common on most of these scenarios. And then we can do things like if we come down to where we have a linked record, so all our projects is a linked record into our projects table, we can change the way that this looks as well. So we might want to change the style to the pills here, and that looks like that. Or we have it as the cards and it looks like that. We can also allow these to be linked and unlinked. So we can do this here, see how it then has the cross to unlink that project from this particular workflow here. We can do add records through a form. So there are some instances where we can add it where we want to do that. Let me just see if I can just put up a form there. So here's a form that we've created. But what I would actually do is if we click around to the different parts of the workflow, let's just finish off making all of these editable. Let's just click on done. So we do have to publish it. If we click publish now, we can see that all of this is laid out. We have the ability to link and unlink projects. We can open this up and link this project in here again. And then we have these prompts that we can edit. So that's like standard. As soon as you add all of those things in, that's what it allows you to do. But we can also then drag some of these things in to start to structure it a little bit nicer. So we might want to add these next to each other. And then that makes it a little bit easier to see some of this information, makes the dashboard look a little bit better. Then we can come across and we can do things like, okay, if we want to add another brand, what's the best way to do that? And if I click on this side here, so we were just editing on the right-hand side before, but if I click on this side, we can actually add in a button here, then creates a little box up here. And if we click on that box, we now have a few actions we can do, which is open the record creation form, go to an interface page, go to an external URL. So if we wanted to add in a new brand, we could just open a record form. And if I click that now, it then opens up this new form here and we could fill this in. So we could fill this in with as many fields as we wish. So again, we would just add in all of the extra things that we want, like our AI prompts. I mean, they get added in automatically, but they can be added and so forth. So the cool part about this as well is that you can have as many forms as you want. So if I open this, we've got our brand asset form attached to this table already. So we could just use this one, or we could create a new one. So we have many options there. And also you can duplicate your existing layout. So if you have a form set and you just want to make a couple of changes, like a filter change or something like that, then you can duplicate your layout, make the filter change, and then you're good to go. So all of this editing that we can do is pretty cool. The other things that we've been doing recently is adding in like delete buttons for these records. So this button here adds a record in the entire database. And then if we do a button inside of this section, we have a few more actions that are available to us, like update the record, copy link to record, delete the record, apply a record template, go to interface page, all the same ones we had before, go to a URL in record. We use that quite a lot now. We never used to, and run automation. So what we actually typically do is we'll go delete and we'll add that one in. So they actually delete brand, and that allows then if somebody wants to delete this record, they can delete it. Now, of course, you want to make sure you have a bit of an extra confirmation. So it's smart that they have added that here, which is you want to make sure people confirm to delete the brand before they actually go ahead and do it. So like these are the options that we have on a field like this. Some of the other things that we play around with on these types of views are you can allow comments. So not so much on this one, there's no real need to comment, but imagine if you have a project or a piece of content and you want to allow some collaboration between team members, then you can have a commenting field here as well. We have a revision history, so you can see what changes get made. So we could turn that on if we wanted to. And then there's the ability to change the size of the title up here. So there's some good amount of options here that allow us to make some good changes. In the middle column here, or the left-hand column, we can filter, we can sort, we can group. So all of these can be done by the different types of fields that you have. So you might want to filter by, the different brands that you have, so many different variables here. So that's just one example of an interface. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through all of the different types of pages. I mean, a lot of these are very self-explanatory, but that's basically how we created all of those fields there. So let's just delete this so we don't have it stuck in the template. So all of these were created in basically the same way. So you can see that we have all of these here like that. Now, the cool thing about the workflows here is, like I said, each of these now have their own forms to add new team members in. So if you have a new team member, you can easily add in that new team member just through this form here in the blue plus button. You don't have to go inside of the table, inside of Airtable, and teach someone how to use the database itself. It's the same as Open Router. So when we use Open Router to pull in all of the AI models for our projects and our templates that we build for clients, so that if they want to use OpenAI GPT 4.1 today, they can. And if they want to use in an hour's time Claude 3.7, they can. And they just load each of those new models into this workflow here with just a few different codes and requirements. And then that model is fully integrated into the system. So we make that very easy inside of the brand settings as well. But keep in mind, like the way that I'm going through this now, this is like the foundations of how you begin to build software tools. Now, of course, if you're building software, you've got a whole different bunch of tools and tech stacks that you're using. There's maybe some coding that you need to do. But this is the foundation of understanding how to build software and the different relationships that you need to have, how the different databases, the tables within the databases talk to each other, all the relational fields, how it's all the schema and how everything is interconnected in the right ways. So if you desire to be a software developer or build your own tech product, then just understanding and buying templates like the project command that we have and understanding this on a granular level is actually going to be quite beneficial for you to actually start to learn those skills that you need in order to develop software. So that's one part of the process. Now, the other part is, we've got some of the same types of views here. We've got a list view here, but we can actually then have different levels to the interfaces that we're building. So if I click open now, this then goes into a second interface within this workflow. So if I come back to our original interface here, this is what we would call a list view page. So if I just come across over here on the left-hand side, you can see this is our layout, list view, organize and prioritize. So it gives you a basic list. From here, you then create your full settings. So the settings are the source. So what table do you want it to be on? How do you want to filter it? So we're filtering it by idea. So only the ideas will show up in this interface, I should say. So that's why we call it project ideas. We only want the ideas to show up in here. Once they start getting planned out, then we don't want them to show here anymore because they're not ideas, they're actually in production. So this is what I mean by understanding interfaces first. You can actually do some really cool things because a lot of the time when we first got started, if we wanted a bunch of ideas, we would build one table for our ideas. Then if we wanted to move those ideas into production, we would have another table with projects. And the relations between those was quite hard to do. There was like some information here, some there, and it was just very confusing. Whereas filtering it, and you can do this in views as well in Airtable, filtering these interfaces just makes life so much easier for everybody to understand what goes where and keeping the records as clean as possible. So we have all of those, and then we can add in extra filters up here. So we have the ability then for people to filter a little bit further if they wish, by a different brand, by different project pillars, by different team members. So that's like team members who are assigned to them. Probably not going to happen in this stage, but it's there anyway. You can also then add any of the fields within that table into the section here. We also have then a couple of buttons. So we're adding a project idea. So this is a new project idea. This is what we need to fill out to add an idea. And we could also add a new project pillar. So we give them a few pillars to work with, but some businesses might have different project pillars or different high-level projects they want to add in as a pillar. So they can easily add that in there as well. And all of that is then set up for the entire page. But then if we click into, so that was like at the top, right? Then if we click into this section here, we have more filtering options. So the big part down in the list here is the fields that we want visible. So these are all the fields within that table, but we don't want to display all of the fields in this list view. We just have all of these ones that are the most important, which is project name, description, hypothesis, pillar, impact, confidence, and ease, and then the overall rating. So they're the things that are most important for us. We can then hide all of these other fields because we don't need them in this stage. But what if you did? So the purpose of the list views for us is we want to see at a high level what are the things there that we can potentially work on. But then once we make a decision or we want to look into these further, then we can actually click open, and then it opens up the record within that table. And then we have more of the information in this part of the interface. So if I come back here and I click on this section here, so the way that we get to that is we want to click into record details. So if I turn that off, I can't click into that anymore. It actually asks me, do I want to allow this? So yes, I want to allow it. And then that then opens up this section where I can do some editing. The other cool part about these record interfaces is that you can split it into groups. So we split the different information into sections as well. And you can add a show background color. It'll match the color of the actual Airtable. And it then groups some of this information to make it a little bit easier to read. The other cool thing that happens, like all of these are typical thing that we added in before. You add in your fields. If you want to make it editable, you can. So things like formulas, you can't make editable. The overall rating, that's a formula. But all of these are added in. We've got our team members one here, so we can style this as we wish. We can have the card view, or we could have the pills view. And then we have our description, hypothesis, context, what part of our project this is for, and then the AI project plan, if we've already generated that. And then tasks down the bottom here is another level as well, which is it's linking to the task database from inside of this record here. So first, inside of your table, you need to link the records together inside of the table. So you have the ability to see records from your tasks table and also see those records inside of the projects table. So once you have that, then we have the ability to go more granular and like another level down and show the important things for that task. So let's see if we can just find one with some tasks down here already. Might need to go and pull up some different in-flight ones. Let's go down here. Let's go to Tube Kit. So this is one we've been talking about in all of these videos. And if we come down here, we can see now all the tasks that are linked to this record, this project, added in down the bottom here. So this is how we can start to create really great products. Like imagine trying to find all of these tasks for this project if you didn't link them into the interface here. So in my opinion, the way that this is structured is so much more intuitive than any of the project management tools. That's why this is such a great product. And this is why these interfaces are incredible to use to help build workflows for your clients and products for your clients that they actually use, that they enjoy using, that's so much more intuitive, that is so much easier to build, honestly. Like we spent, maybe 50 hours building this overall, but so many people spend more than that, setting up tools like Monday.com, and Monday.com is supposed to be a finalized product that is ready for this type of workflow within your business or this type of system within your business. So this is like the benefit of these Airtables. And these are all simply just drag and drop. Like we can add another group here. We can add in more of the fields from that table. Like the ability to customize is so huge for such a widely varied product like Airtable. It can basically do anything, and these interfaces help make it so much easier for everybody to use. So let's just publish that one now and come in, and like, these are all set layouts by Airtable, right? So the Kanban view is a set layout. They have like a schedule view, so you can see, you know, who's working on what at what time. You can see they have like a dashboard view as well, so you can pull in some graphs and charts and stuff. So I'm going to go into charts and stuff at another time, but it's just a way to display all the information you have, like especially the numbers and the formulas that you have, the percentage of overdue tasks. So we'll go into all that another time. What I want to get to in this video is the actual custom workflows that we're building that allow us to build really cool workflows for not just this product, but the TubeKit product, the content system product, the AI meme agent products. Like, we're using these custom workflows with the ability to do some pretty incredible things. So let's dive into that one now as well. So on the left-hand side here, if we choose a layout, we can see that it has more, and start with a blank canvas. So it's literally a blank canvas when we start, completely white. And we just begin to add in elements from the system itself. So this won't be added down here when you first get started. You just have the ability to add in text, dividers, grids, calendars, Kanban, timeline, gallery, list, chart, number, record picker, filter, and button. So all of these things, a lot of these, or have basically all of them, are already their own interface layouts, but you can also add them into your blank slate. The beauty of these blank slate type of workflows is the record picker. The record picker allows us to then link in any type of table from the entire database and pull that information into the single workflow. So while we don't do it in this workflow, we've only got the one table linked in. With something like, you know, let me give you a quick little sneak peek into our upcoming AI TubeKit product. For something like this, we actually have the ability to choose a record from one database. Let's just go to this one here. And then the output that we create is from another database, but then that database is linked back to here. And then we can, if we have multiple variations or multiple outputs of AI for that one record, we can actually link them back in to the same record in this workflow, so that we know which AI outputs are integrated or actually related to the original record. So it's very hard to see this type of thing if you're not using interfaces. And this is the really cool thing about what you can do when building your own interfaces from scratch. But anyway, that's like super advanced. We're going to come back to that in a couple of weeks. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see more about that. But inside of this workflow now, we're basically just adding in all of the elements into this interface that we need for this workflow to operate as we want it to. So we're starting with a few key aspects up here, which is the status, choose the brand that it's for, and choose a task. So this task has all of the tasks that have a condition over here of to do. So if the status is to do, then we can plan this task with AI. If it's just an idea, then it will disappear. So the condition over here allows us to only pull in the records into this interface when it's actually ready. This is like a really big key part of interfaces, is that we can, as the product designer, we can determine a step-by-step process with interfaces, so that only once step one has been completed, will it show up in step two. So what I'm saying is, only when it goes from idea to do, will it show up in this list here. If it's still in the idea phase, then it's actually not going to show. So that's why I don't want to change that. The idea stage gets added in here automatically. So if we were to look at the status in this section here, it's only ideas here. And for us to then push these ideas into the next phase, we actually need to go to do, as it says here, and then it will push it into the next phase so that we have the ability to find that in this list. So this is how we can start to have some really great product design aspects to move people through different stages of the workflow. And then in order for them to keep up, we just add a little bit of information up here with a text block to tell them how to actually use the system. So once they add in the record, then all of this stuff should be already added. And we can also tell them to add a little bit more extra context if they need to. They can then create a start date and a deadline date, and then move through into the next stage. So this is what I mean. Like, we've got one record selection here, and then we've got our linked records here of what they need to choose. So here We're then telling them, okay, now add in the team members and tools required for this task. Only add in the right ones, not everybody. Then we're saying, okay, now optimize your AI output. So here it's then pulling in the prompts. So remember, we had the prompts automatically get added to a new record based on that automation that we talked about earlier. So basically we're saying, hey, these are the prompt structures that the AI is going to generate. If you want them to display differently, then go ahead and change that output structure now. Then we have the ability to execute the AI project planner. So here we give them a little bit more information. So we give them a recommendation of the type of model to use. So like the chain of thought or reasoning type of model. Ensure you edit the output to be relevant to your business. Then they choose the AI model from here, and then they plan the project, and the AI status shows here. So as that's running, it'll say AI writing, and then eventually the AI project plan will drop into here, and then this status will change to AI complete. So that's why in this workflow, this is a field that is not editable, because if I change that, then they could actually change this themselves. We don't want them to change this field themselves. The AI updates that automatically. So we want to make sure that that's not an editable field. So again, this is how interfaces are so much better than if you were to use just the table, for example. Because if you were in the table, then you don't have the ability to turn off whether that is editable or not. I mean, you could change some views potentially, but it's so much easier in these interfaces. Then we have our next step. So we're literally just giving them steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. A little bit more information here. We're linking to the automation as well in a button. So we set this up in a record when we're setting up the Airtable base. Then if there's any glitches, they literally just click this button and shoot straight off into the automation. Again, like having that inside of the data, inside of the tables, is so much harder to get your mind around. Then we have the same type of execution prompts with our status, and then the final project plan comes in here. Then we have our tasks. So again, all of the same stuff, but some very detailed instructions of how they do all of that. So as you can see, there's a lot there that can happen. And let me just come back in here for a second. In order to add all of these things, we simply just go add element. We've already linked in. So at the start, we linked in a record picker. That record picker is then available for us to add in all of the fields that we want. We just add in those fields. Let's add those 3. We can then go editable to make that editable if we want. We can drop and drag them. So we can make it like that. Then if we just hover over the entire section, we can then change the color of that section. We can then make it full widescreen, or we can make it narrow. We can remove the background again. We can do so many different things in these workflows here. Even if you have named your fields differently, we can change the field names here. So we want to say, this is your prompt. So we can make these labels different to the field names that you have in the database. So especially if you have a developer who's using has IDs for their fields, so they're using things like this, and that's quite hard for someone who is a normal everyday user to understand what ID /underscore view actually means. Whereas here, you can change the name of that field without changing the name of the field in the actual database itself. It's just changing it on the interface. So you can make that as detailed as possible, and you can remove it even. So there's so many different things that we can do in this particular section. If you need to delete it, then you just hover over it or click on it and then just hit the delete button, and that's gone. So it's really as simple as that. And like I said, a large part of building interfaces is really just diving in and starting to play around with all of the different fields, clicking on the buttons, seeing what you can do, and understanding the different relations between the different fields. And it's really understanding database structuring and relational fields in order to create the best products possible. Like if I look at this product that we created, it is 10 to 20 times better than the very first product I created. The very first product I created, a ton of people loved and purchased and used, but it didn't have any of these type of interfaces. And if I look back at it now, it's like, no wonder so many of those people were confused when they were actually using the system. It took such a high amount of education to get people to use it. And honestly, probably more than half of them never did, because it was a little bit of it was just way too hard for people to get their head around. So interfaces make these types of products so much easier. If you are building AI automations, you want to have these types of interfaces to make your product more valuable and have the perceived value of that product to be much higher. Like if you imagine you're trying to sell a table of like a Google Sheets product to a client versus something like an Airtable product with an interface, what is the client going to choose, especially if they're not technical? Of course, they want an interface that looks exactly like this. So I hope this gave you at least some idea of the different workflows that you can build, but keep in mind, like we've got TubeKit coming out in a few weeks where we're going to go deep into those interfaces as well. If you are interested in any of the other interfaces that we've built, then make sure you comment down below, and I'll definitely do a video about that in future. But this training here today is an interface on tools that are in production right now for clients getting used every single day. These are like advanced tools. We're not just building some random table with a bunch of dummy information to teach this to you. These are real tools with real world application for real businesses making real money. So if you do want to dive deeper into not just Project Command OS, but any other tools, then make sure you check out our website. We have a bunch of really cool templates available. And the templates that we sell to you are literally like less than 1/10 of the price that we sell to the clients for. So if we install this into a client, they're going to pay a few $1,000s. You get it for a tiny fraction of that cost. You get to understand it all. You get the education behind it. You get to learn how to set it up. And you can literally take this template or any of our other ones and go out and sell them to clients for 10 to 20 times the price that you pay for it. So I'd encourage you to go check that out. Plus, if you do purchase any of our products, you do get access into our community for free, where you get to learn from other people as well. We have, I think, 5 or 6 expert masterclasses in there. We have a few extra templates and automations in there for free. And we generally do have quite a few updates over the months as well with new templates, new expert masterclasses and those types of things. So make sure you get involved. I'd love to see you in the community. And of course, this is video 6 of 6. Comment down below what you thought of it. I'm always looking to learn how could I improve this video series as well. And I'll make sure that I do that in the next one. So see you in the next video.